Hi everyone, hope you're all well. I've come across not one but two articles in the Metro newspaper from November the 2nd, and it's referring to the issue of reckless driving, which is something I feel strongly about. Just a disclaimer, I'm not a driver myself, and I've never lost anyone to reckless driving. Um, no one in my immediate family has ever been, for example, in a fatal road accident or seriously injured. Um, but it does seem to be an area where justice is incredibly lenient. Um, I've made no secret of the fact that I feel that our justice system in general is too soft. This is not 100% across the board. Sometimes there are sentencing outcomes that are appropriate. I think the whole life tariff, for example, for Wayne Couzens was correct. And I've just read another report here, literally as I was waiting for the camera to upload, about another case in Ipswich where a teenager shot another boy in the face, uh, causing him horrendous injuries. Now he got 24 years, which is a pretty long sentence, to protect the public. So there is an inconsistency in sentencing. I think some judges are a lot more competent than others, but I do think there is a culture of leniency in our justice system. So I'll go read out both these cases. Bear with me because it's the Metro, they're not very long. But I think this just really highlights how outrageous our approach to reckless driving is. Now, I made the video earlier on Lady Eliza Manor. It's a little bit more background to that case. I put a link from the Guardian on that. I think it was the Guardian. She done 47 miles per hour in a 40-mile-per-hour zone. That's relatively minor compared to other offences. It's not 47 miles per hour is not drastically fast. So it's a relatively minor offence, but I still think there is an elitist issue there. I mean, the way I look at it is if she can afford to be a socialite, she can afford to go to clubs and so on, she can afford a £100 fine. So I repeat what I said. I maintain what I said. I think not many people are going to look at that favourably. But the following two cases are more serious. So this is the first one, both from the Metro, the 2nd of November. Doesn't mention the reporter. Businessman smashes £100,000 Ferrari California at 100 miles per hour while drunk and high on cocaine. Darren Turner, who had bought the motor after splitting from his wife, lost control at a roundabout, went straight over it and hit a lamppost before bouncing across a dual carriageway and almost colliding with another vehicle. The 46-year-old boss of a pallet firm employing 15 people was treated in hospital. Don't know what pallets are, but that's beside the point. Tests showed he was 9 times over the drug driving limit and nearly twice the drink drive limit. He admitted dangerous driving and other offences and was jailed for a year at Warwick Crown Court after a judge heard he had previous convictions. Incidentally, Warwick Crown Court is this very same court where the other guy I mentioned in the last video, I forget his name now, it's hard to keep up with all these cases. The same court gave that guy a tap on the wrist. So it might be that particular courts are lenient. There might actually be a lack of consistency between circuits. Warwick Crown Court, it's not the first time I've come across that jurisdiction for leniency. I mean, it should, in theory, if they're following guidelines, should be the same across the board. Judges look at aggravating factors and mitigating factors. Now, to me, if this guy has previous convictions, that should be an aggravating factor. 1 year? Now, thankfully, he didn't kill anyone, he didn't hurt anyone, but he very, very well could have done. I think an appropriate outcome for there because it's fine for me to criticise, but I should propose an alternative. So he got 1 year. I jail him for 5 years minimum and give him a lifetime ban. He should never be allowed behind a wheel again, ever. He should also be forced to take a rehabilitation course in terms of his drug problem. Um, but that's just outrageous. 1 year. That's bad enough, but the following case is even worse. A teenager who killed five people, including two children by dangerous driving, has been caught back behind the wheel. Jason Asquith, now 19, served 2 years and 3 months for crashing a stolen car into a tree in Leeds in 2017. Carlisle magistrates sent him back to jail for driving while disqualified in Penrith, Cumbria. 5 lives, including two children. 5 lives. Let's look at that another way. The massacre earlier this year in Plymouth killed 5 people. It was a massacre. This guy, through his selfishness, through his stupidity, killed 5 people. 5 lives. 5 people who've never come back. 2 years and 3 months. I mean, that is, it's absolutely nothing. It isn't even a quarter of a decade. 2 years and 3 months. A short-serving prime minister would serve longer than that. Theresa May and Gordon Brown were in office longer than that. It's nothing. And rather than learning his lesson from the soft sentence, he gets back behind the wheel. He puts more lives at risk. Well, he's 19 now, so he's an adult. I think he should be jailed for a very lengthy period. Doesn't say what the sentence is. Um, but I just cannot fathom that. And I would defy anyone to say that is a just outcome. 2 years and 3 months for taking 5 lives. What I don't understand when it comes to driving offences is why someone's given a suspended ban. They get 4 years, or they're not allowed to drive for 4 years. As far as I'm concerned, if you've killed someone or seriously injured someone, you should never be allowed to drive again. If you're heavily over the limit and going at an excessive rate, you should be banned for a significant period of time. But what I cannot fathom is this idea of, well, we'll ban him for 4 or 5 years. Hope for the best. Someone who's killed someone or seriously injured someone should never, ever, ever be allowed behind a wheel again. And if they go behind a wheel, it should be instantly jailed, as has happened. But this he wouldn't have been in Cumbria. He wouldn't have got behind the wheel again and possibly killed more people if he had had a real sentence in the first place. He would still be in jail. Hopefully long enough so that he um actually has some remorse. Clearly he has no remorse. I mean, if I lost a loved one to a thug like that, I would really, really want to lay into him. I'll be quite honest about it. But it's easy for me to say I've never been through that torment. I've never had that experience. I just have profound sympathy for those who do. And I think there's something very, very rotten about our justice system. Well, I can complain about this, I can rant, but I have to be productive. I have to offer what's the alternative? Well, firstly, I think that judges need to be more accountable. The judge that gave him 2 years and 3 months, is not fit to be in office. I think it should have been a minimum of 15 years. The sheer toll should have been taken into account. Even if he'd only killed one person, I say only. If he killed one person, it should have been longer than 2 years and 3 months. But 5 people? 5 lives? Two of them were young lads, you know? They had their whole lives ahead of them. They could have been anything. They could have been teachers, doctors. It's just so, so wrong. Um, so I propose that judges are more accountable to the public. I think the jobs should be on the line if they're consistently soft. I think Warwick Crown Court, I don't know why, it always seems to be that court. Very often it is. Um, I'm not suggesting that judges be elected because that can bring other issues. You might get demographic biases in particular areas. But I do think that the process for holding judges to account should be a lot more direct. As it stands, people can write to the Attorney General and he can, as I understand it, lobby the Supreme Court, if I've got that right. But there's absolutely no guarantee of anything changing. The Tories talk tough on crime, but they've been in power for 11 years and we still see this consistent softness. It makes no sense. I think a criminal that shows no remorse, clearly rehabilitation doesn't work, so they belong behind bars. And this is what irritates me about the Liberal left. They love the idea of rehabilitation. It's their go-to every time. They don't like punishment. They don't think criminals should be punished for what they've done, but they're obsessed by rehabilitation. Well, I would put it to them, what happens when rehabilitation isn't working? When the soft approach isn't working. No doubt he got out after 2 years and 3 months with some sort of scheme to rehabilitate him. Well, it didn't work, did it? I favour for young offenders maybe a scared straight approach or some sort of national service. I think the system needs to be much, much tougher on young offenders. The Sentencing Council of England and Wales actually states on the website that they don't believe in judicial punishment for young offenders. They believe in rehabilitation. So depraved feral youths who terrorise the public are basically given a tap on the wrist. Um, this is the equivalent of a tap on the wrist when you consider what was involved: 5 lives, 2 years and 3 months. Staggering. So I think there needs to be more pressure on judges. I would totally overhaul the sentencing council itself with an elected body. Maybe some MPs should be there because they're elected, therefore they can be held to account. In a committee basis, maybe, or at the very least, if they're not to be elected, I think that they should be a lot more direct with the public. I've contacted them, by the way, and they've told me, oh, we have consultation with the public, and they do on some crimes, but not on every crime. They have a select few, actually, where you can be consulted on, but that's just a consultation. It doesn't mean that anything will change. Um, One thing is absolutely certain. There is a massive, massive disconnect between how the majority of the public feel. I can't speak for everyone, but how the majority of the public feel and what is actually enacted in terms of sentencing. I cannot think of any reasonable person who would say that 2 years and 3 months is okay for killing 5 people. I think even many on the Liberal left wouldn't agree with that outcome. They might still believe in rehabilitation, but they might concede and admit that that outcome is outrageous. Um, anyway, I don't want to ramble on, but I think there needs to be more accountability. I think sentencing is far too lenient far too often. I think the Sentencing Council of England and Wales is incompetent and needs to be overhauled because they don't really have their jobs on the line. They're made up of judges and barristers, I understand, so they don't have their jobs on the line. Um, I think there is an arrogance there because the website is very full of self praise. Like they have a section myths about sentencing, things like that. Um, as if the public is ignorant about this, and it's sort of like, oh well, the media just makes it look bad. But these are real world cases. It's not just anecdotes that haven't happened. These are actual sentencing outcomes. Um, I think that there needs to be much, much tougher penalties for young offenders because, as it stands, leniency just makes them feel that they can do it again. There's no deterrent. I would favour well organised scared straight approach. I don't mean just for theatrics, okay? And I don't mean anything brutal. I'm not talking about um, physical penalties, but the fact of the matter is, a lot of young offenders think they're big, tough guys. Some female offenders as well. They think they're tough. They think they're gangsters. You know, and they have an utter contempt for society. They have no fear of the law. So some sort of scared straight approach might actually have an influence. Um, its results, by the way, in the United States are mixed. They're not entirely bad. They're not entirely good. So At the very least, we should look at it. Look at what was successful. Look at what wasn't. Um, why not at least consider it? Some sort of specific national service. I wouldn't say across the board because I don't believe in taking 2 years out of a young person's life when they might have graduated, they might be going on to do something. But I think specifically for young offenders, I would propose some sort of national service for more minor offences, not something like this. Something like this, it should be instant jail. But for, let's say, shoplifting or cases like that, I would propose a tough um, sort of national service. Make them useful. It goes well beyond community service because I think community services, you know, they don't really care about that, so it needs to be tougher than that. Anyway, I'll round this up, but as you could tell, it's something I feel very strongly about, and I don't know why. There's two areas of crime I think are consistently solved. One of them is reckless driving, costs lives. That's obvious from that case in Leeds. Um, but the other area is on gang activity. I mean, if you get a gang of teenagers who target someone, they lay into someone, um, maybe the ringleaders will get 10 years, the others might get 5 years or less. To me, that particular kind of crime is absolutely depraved, evil. I think gang culture needs to be purged, and I think that areas like so called drill music need to be scrutinized. Drill so called artists cannot whine about, oh, it's just expression. Spare me. It is literally gang members boasting about their activities. Freedom of speech has responsibility. And if you're promoting crime, then you're abusing that responsibility. So, finally, depending on my own life, I've got lots of plans, there's lots of things I want to do, but I do feel very passionate about this issue, crime and justice. So, if the circumstances allow it, and I have the means, I'm thinking about setting up some sort of, whether it be a lobby group, charity, something to change the situation. And the focus would be certainly on victims, but also on scrutinizing sentencing, changing sentencing. I don't know what form that's going to take now. I mean, I could get elected to Parliament, maybe sit on a committee. There's a lot of areas to could explore, but it's something I feel very, very strongly about. And if I do that, of course, I'll be promoting it. So, but it's also a huge dedication, and I have other things going on in my life. So I'm not sure if I have the capability to do that right now. But what I would argue is those who are in a position of power, those who are tasked with sentencing, they need to start listening to public anger. They need to be a lot more efficient at what they're doing. I don't think the Sentencing Council of England and Wales is a very efficient organisation. Um, I really have a problem with their attitude to young offenders. I think their whole attitude is, well, we'll just try the softly, softly approach. And they deny that's what it is. But what the hell is a case like that, if not soft? I mean, what do they have to say about that? Well, I know what they would say. We can't comment on individual cases, which is a lazy excuse. But this is something that's happening. And, people might say I'm populist or I'm even zealous on this, but it is just so, so wrong. And it has to change.